Mastermind Consortium's Interview an Expert. I'm Jo Lafaye, founder and your co-host for today. It's summer 2024, and wildfire season in California officially began on June 10th this year. We've had over 2,400 wildfires with over 95,000 acres burned. Anyone who lives in California is concerned about wildfires. Our insurance premiums are going up. Homeowners are getting canceled and having to find fair plan insurance, which offers less coverage for more money. It's a big concern, and we all need to be educated on how to protect our largest asset, which is typically our home and our other properties, and more importantly, our lives and the lives of our families and our pets. I'd like to introduce the first guest for 2024, Stuart Mitchell, Wildfire Mitigation Advisor. Stuart lives in Sonoma County and has been serving people affected by fire for many years. Stuart is a wildfire mitigation advisor and is going to talk to us about many ways that we can protect our lives and our properties. Thank you for joining us today, Stuart. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. And tell us which areas do you serve? You live in Sonoma County, and I'm sure you serve Sonoma. And what other counties are you offering help in?
Yeah, I work in Sonoma County, and I also serve Napa County and Marin County. I've looked at a lot of HOAs, for example, in Napa and Sonoma County. And I'm happy to serve anywhere in the North Bay, pretty much.
Excellent. So can you tell us a little bit about the consulting that you offer and how that's different from what the fire departments offer?
Yeah, so I'm a certified wildfire mitigation specialist, and that's a training that really focuses on how to prepare individuals and communities for wildfire. And it looks into structure hardening and defensible space in a very in-depth manner. And I've been doing it since 2019. I've looked at hundreds and hundreds of properties of all different types and sizes. And I really spend quality time with the individual on their property with them. So we go around together learning about individual plants and trees and different architectural issues regarding how it's vulnerable to wildfire. And then I send a summary report that encapsulates, what we saw together. And I'm giving guidance around different improvements that could be made. And it's very individually tailored to the particular home, different motivations by the individual who has the home, and working on compromises and solutions and ways to reduce risk.
Great. And how is that different from what the fire department comes out and does for people?
Yeah, the fire departments do an amazing job. They're highly trained individuals. They typically don't have the time to spend like I do. So I might spend an hour and a half with someone or even longer looking at all the different details. And I'm also talking about evacuation, early alerts, and really emphasizing structure hardening. They tend to, not always, but they tend to focus on defensible space that's evolving. They're getting better around their prevention, a holistic prevention approach. Marin County, by the way, does a great job with their program. They have a lot of very in-depth ways of looking at things like this. But generally speaking, firefighters are looking at a basic defensible space. They appropriately need to know, can they locate your home and can they get in and out of where you live? So they feel like they can get in and out and basic defensible space has been handled. They're sort of okay with that. I go further because I really want people to have their home survive a wildfire, as they do, but I'm really spending a lot of time on structure hardening and spending individual consultation time with them.
That's fantastic. And can you tell us a little bit about your background, your why? Why have you gone into this field, and what motivates you to get up and get out and meet with people and go over properties every day?
Yeah, well, I have a background in environmental planning and back in college. And then for many years, I was actually a social worker working in mental health. And after the 2017 fires in Sonoma County, I was a FEMA trained crisis counselor for survivors of the fires. So through that experience, I met a lot of people who had been directly and indirectly impacted by the fires, including first responders. And my conversations with first responders really tapped into an inspiration about how we can help them. A lot of times during a big event, people will call into a radio show and say, thank you so much for your work. Can we bring you a pizza? Can we bring you cookies? Can we put a thank you sign? And a lot of times the chief that's on the radio will say, thanks so much for your generosity, but what we really want you to do is prepare your home.
Right.
So when I was hearing about that years ago, I thought this is a way that we can actually support first responders and reducing traumatic stress for them.
Yeah.
So physical harm. Additionally, I'm teaching people on how to protect their life and their property, which is really their most valued asset.
Okay. So Stuart, typically what are the various things that you see that people are over relying on to protect their property, and what should they be focused on instead?
Yeah, one of the things actually they over rely on is what I call the cavalry. People are assuming that every first responder is going to be able to locate their property and defend it in various means, and that's not always the case. So we're used to immediacy, we're used to calling 911 and having someone show up. But during a big event, that's very unlikely to happen. So over relying on law enforcement, firefighters, et cetera, is not a great idea. So what we want to do is prepare our property so that it's self-defended, and that goes into structure hardening and defensible space and things like that. But there are some technologies that sometimes people over rely on, including water, actually. So somebody has a big swimming pool, they might think, oh, I have all this water, I'm going to get a pool pump and I'm going to draft water out of the pool and connect it to fire hoses with water cannons and shoot water around the property. I would say that that is an amazing option if you know the exact timing of the fire. So in other words, if you're shooting water and it's not the time, then it's not going to be very effective. On the other hand, if you have a garden hose and you have a small little fire next to your house and you're there, water's magic. It'll put it out just like that. So timing is essential. So a lot of times people are over relying on different technologies like that. And a lot of different systems are hooked to cell service. As we know, cell service can go down. There might be backup for maybe 12 hours, maybe 48 hours, but eventually that backup, if it exists, will go away. So what I recommend is going to the tried and true standards that have been tested. There's a lot of scientific laboratories out there that are testing how materials ignite, how they can mitigate those different aspects. Firewise landscaping has been studied, and we can talk a little bit about that. But over relying on the magic bullet or the cavalry to come in is often not a great idea.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're saying preparation is key. Don't wait till the emergency hits to ask for help. Start taking some accountability for what you're planting around your house and how you're hardening the space.
I would like to add, though, one thing that I thought of is that there is a bit of technology that is catching on. I'm not sure, Mary Jo, if you're signed on to it, but it's called Watch Duty. So Watch Duty is a free app that can be added to your phone or your tablet. And what it does is it geolocates where a wildfire is and its status on that fire. So during the Crystal Fire that Mary Jo mentioned, that immediately went off on my phone, and I was able to tell exactly where the fire was, what the status of the fire was, and I could send that information to my buddy who's working up in that area and let him know, in case he didn't know, actually there's a fire right in your area. You may want to be prepared for that. So watchduty.org is a free app. It was actually designed by a friend of mine up here in Sonoma County a couple of years ago, and it's gone throughout the West. And it's an essential free app. I also recommend you sign up for your local official alerts in Marin County, Sonoma County, and Napa County. But Watch Duty is a type of technology that can be extremely beneficial, and it can give you a heads up about upcoming evacuation warnings and potential evacuation orders. They're curating information from the Sheriff's Department, CAL FIRE, and other authorities. And they're not just commenting like on Facebook. These are trained reporters that are giving the status of the fire. So it's definitely a game changer.
That is very helpful information. Thank you for sharing that. So I'm assuming when you meet with people at their home and do their plan to help them mitigate any risk, that you probably sign them up right there for that app. So that's great. Appreciate you sharing that.
Firefighters in Marin County, by the way, they're doing an outstanding job. They've really improved how they address all of these issues, actually. But generally speaking, throughout fire country in California, it's not so well thought out and progressive in that sense. There are other consultants that do the kind of work that I do, but surprisingly, in my mind, they don't even mention evacuation. So I'm gonna tap back into the insurance issue. A lot of times people are focused on their monthly cost on their insurance bill, which is obviously top of mind. How much is the bill going to cost me every month or every year? So that's usually their number one concern. But then there's these other concerns like not getting hurt or dying, not losing your home, and the policy as well. So a lot of times that I flip that over and I'm saying not getting hurt, not getting injured or worse is number one. Number two is not losing your home. And number three is actually the policy. And number four is the monthly bill. And the reason I mention that is because life safety should always come first. But it's surprisingly when I'm talking to people that they're really focused on the monthly bill. So
Yeah.
again, bill is super important, but
Yeah.
these other two issues are top of mind. So the reason I want to bring that back up is because uh, the Watch Duty app is getting a lot of information from a lot of different sources, including weather reports. So when I go to someone's property, I talk to them about fire weather. Fire weather is predicted by the National Weather Service, often 1 to 3 days before a red flag. So if you're looking for a red flag, which you should be, that's great. But if you're looking at the National Weather Service for fire weather, that can come even before a red flag. So again, that's a game changer. And I'll just share this about the Lahaina fire in Maui that happened last August. It's a tragic event. There's many different factors that have contributed to that event. You know, the firefighters and the utility companies, et cetera, et cetera. But in my mind, the top issue, which I hardly ever hear anybody talking about, is fire weather. The National Weather Service let the area of Lahaina know not 1 hour, not 1 day, but 4 days in advance. They let the county know fire weather was coming to your area. So even though unfortunately the town would have still been destroyed because of extreme weather and extreme winds, if people had evacuated, you would have saved 100 lives. So that's one of the reasons why I do talk briefly about these topics when I do my consultations, because they're extremely important.
That's a lot of impact. Yeah, that's unfortunate that that was overlooked. And pets too. You know, people want to save their pets. And I had a friend in Santa Rosa who had goats and chickens and pigs and dogs and cats, and so getting all those animals out of an area where they were basically driving through forests to get to their home. That's another big concern. So human life, pet life, homes. There's a lot to be considered, and a lot of things that you don't want to lose.
I'm
So,
really glad you brought that up. And I would just add that getting out early, especially in those scenarios where you have a horse trailer or a motorhome. A lot of people have these bug out vehicles, we call them. They have a motorhome that they want to drive out and stay in a comfortable way during these events. But these are big vehicles that often block intersections. So all the more reason to pay attention to the weather, get your early alerts, and get out early to get your animals and your vehicles out.
right. Yeah, good thinking. Maybe even keep your motorhome somewhere else so you can drive away in your sports car a little faster and just flee to your motorhome in a safer area.
I've
So many,
actually said that exact same thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's there's so many things that we don't think about that, of course, in hindsight, you wish you had thought it through, and that's why it's great that you're actually willing to go to people's homes. And how much time do you spend with them? And what does a report cost? Is it a huge investment? I mean, I was in a meeting with the estate planning council and some realtors the other day, and the realtor there said that the median home price in County is 1.8 million. That's a lot of value to protect. And a lot of people have more than one home. They own rental properties, and office buildings, and apartment buildings. And with that kind of equity and value, what does it cost to get a report that will really give them some valuable tools to protect their assets?
Yeah, so it depends on the complexity of the property and how far I'm traveling to get there. But typically, there's a range between say $300 and $500 or $600. And with that, it includes all my time on the site with the owner, and a summary report. And I'm taking photographs, taking notes, and really looking at things comprehensively. And I really do feel like it is an incredible value when it comes to your most valued asset.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I know insurance rates are going way up, and with insurance companies leaving the state, people are now forced to have a California Fair insurance plan, which of course is more expensive for less coverage. And it doesn't cover liability and other things. So now they still have to have their other insurance policy to cover all the other things that aren't fire insurance. So the cost of living in California is definitely there's a pinch. There's and a lot of people are starting to feel like they really need some resources and some tools to protect their home, because if you can't get the coverage to fully rebuild or to rebuild a similar quality, that's even more motivation to want to protect what you already have.
Yeah. And oftentimes I'm actually helping people to prioritize appropriately. So they'll say, oh, I think we need to cut these big trees down over here. And I get there and I find that no, actually, that's not a priority. Priority is this. So instead of spending $10,000 on that, you might want to spend, $800 on trimming those trees. That's actually not the priority on this property because I'm here looking at it. You want to spend the money over here. So a lot of times actually saving people money when it comes to decision making. I see people all the time spending a lot of money on the wrong priorities. And I'm talking very smart people with all kinds of different backgrounds. And I see it like 90% of the time. So I'm actually often helping people spend their money more appropriately. Again, I'm not saying, oh, here's this thing, you want to buy this from me. I'm there as your consultant. And then I can help guide them around different decision making when it comes to spending money in terms of priority. And the other thing is that even though there's being money spent on the property, what I tell people is there is a consolation around that. You're spending time hiring a trained, certified wildfire mitigation specialist. You've taken the measures that insurance companies will require, and you're actually adding value to your home because adding tangible improvements to the structure and to the defensible space. That will be seen as added value. It's not like giving money to your car insurance. You're not getting a new paint job. In this case, you might be, hardening your deck, which is a big vulnerability area, by the way. And that is adding value to the property.
That's great. That's great information. So that brings me to another question. I know I work with realtors a lot in my field. So I'm hearing a lot of talk about homes that are hard to insure and especially hard to get insurance by the closing date. If you are going for the fair plan, that can take longer, and homes that are selling, the sellers want them to close in 30 days and so forth. So it seems like that might even be a good thing for someone who's considering selling to do before they list their home for sale. Do you see people doing that? And do you work with realtors around that?
Yeah, I'm actually an affiliate member of NORBAR, the Bay Area Association of Realtors. And so as an affiliate member, given short presentations to that group as well. But essentially, yes, I've worked with many sellers and buyers and realtors around, is this property as bad as we think it is or not? And a lot of times I'll say, actually, it's not as bad as you might think, because if you do this, this, and this, it's going to up the survivability dramatically, or might want to consider the severity of the situation.
Right. And I know you're a resource for insurance brokers as well, their clients. And of course, getting ahead of the problem is always better in almost any situation. And I'm sure and you don't want to wait till you're getting canceled to take action.
Getting
Uh, I've heard that a lot of the insurance companies are they using drones, or how are they're inspecting roofs and defensible space, and they're really doing their due diligence and see if they want to continue insuring someone.
They're not. actually, actually, I don't really agree. Generally, what they're doing is they're looking at CAT modeling, catastrophic
Mm,
modeling. They're
mm,
looking at zip codes. They're looking at post, pre fire history. So those are all relevant aspects of it. But honestly, there's a lot of things that I'm recommending that they don't even seem to appreciate. And it's based in science around, these entities that burn buildings down all day.
mm,
That's what they do. So why I'm saying that is because they're really looking at an overview from outer space, maybe a drone, and they cannot see what I see. So my argument is, yes, the aerial imagery is really helpful. It can give some shed light onto the subject. However, you cannot see what I see because you're not on the ground. And I even hear drone companies and insurance companies and these other companies saying, we're going to give you ground truthing. And I'm like, well, how are you giving ground truthing when you're not on the ground? So
right.
I've been on the ground. I've looked at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of properties of all different shapes and sizes and all different kinds of locations. And the insurance companies may not be able to afford paying someone to actually do a comprehensive evaluation. But my
Right.
argument is, instead of just getting people off the rolls, they
Mhm.
might want to hire someone who can evaluate how to reduce risk for them and for the homeowner. So
Right.
they are spending a lot of time and money around analyses like this. But in my view, they're really missing the important aspects, and they're not having someone really look at the property.
Yeah, they're looking at the broader strokes, the bigger maps. Yeah, that's interesting. So really, in a lot of ways, what you do, it's potentially going to help them stay insured, but more importantly, it might help them stay alive and protect their home. And that, as we talked about earlier, is really protecting our lives, our families, our pets is the number one concern, and then our homes and so forth. So yeah, it sounds like I need to have you come out and check out my house pretty soon. My house has been a hardy, but still, like you said, I might be over relying on some things and blind to other things that I should be paying attention to. So
Yeah, that's it.
to doing that. Tell us a little bit about any other, hot points that people really should know, or resources and tools that you recommend. Is there anything else you can share with us that's of value today?
Um, you know, there's a product out there that's pretty interesting that I've learned about. And again, I caution people around it. It's not a magic bullet, but it can be an extra tool in the toolkit. And it's a product called Komodo, like the Komodo dragon.
Hmm.
It's called Komodo Fire Defense Systems. And basically, it's a fire retardant that's sprayed on vegetation. So you've heard about Check probably. It's the pink stuff that they drop out of aircraft. This is another product that's not fertilizer based, so it does not harm aquatic life. And it's food based actually, but it works to resist combustion of vegetation and other items actually. And it resists rain up to like 2 inches of rain. And what it does is that you can spray it on vegetation and it'll reduce the combustion of that vegetation. So it's a pretty interesting product. I'm not selling it directly. I'm just mentioning it as an
Hmm.
additional tool in your toolkit, not as a plan A of like handling your defensible space appropriately, but as an extra measure that can be an asset. So that's just an
Right.
example of a technology that might be worth looking at. And in a pinch, it can be very helpful if someone hasn't handled their defensible space like they should have.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be hopefully, new and improved things coming on the market all the time, since this is probably not a problem that's going to go away. in our lifetimes and maybe ever. So I appreciate your time today very much. And you're clearly a wealth of knowledge and someone that probably most homeowners need to hear from. Great. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time and your expertise, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.